Let me take you back to 2018 when we got the expansion that saved Destiny 2, Forsaken. With Forsaken we got new supers for all three elements on all three classes, and the one I was most excited for as a Warlock player was of course Chaos Reach, because it's sick. It's literally a beam of lightning from your hands. But I think everyone knew that the one that would change the game the most was, well, Radiance. Tons of people were excited for the super, as it would finally give Warlock the true support style that people always wanted it to have. And to understand why people were so excited for this super, we have to go all the way back to D1. Even back in those days, Warlocks had always kind of been the de facto support class, even though they didn't have like the protective super that Bubble Titans did. They still had the ability to resurrect themselves with Solar and a powerful revive-based exotic called Light Beyond Nemesis, which you probably remember by the feathers on their head. Due to this, most Warlocks in hard-hitting content found themselves running Sunsinger as with this helmet and almost acting like the team's healer, running around and rezzing people and preventing wipes with their own self-res. All that is to say that when Warlocks were getting a true healing style subclass, a lot of people were very excited, and I was excited too. But while I love the idea of Solar Warlock being a healer style subclass, we've reached a point where I think Well of Radiance is the single most destructive thing in the PvE sandbox and just needs to be reworked. So let's talk about Well of Radiance. Well of Radiance puts down what is effectively a super rift that heals and empowers everyone standing inside. It used to also give a crazy overshield, but at least that part's gone now. And if you've ever played Destiny, you know how insane this is, and if you're an OG player, you knew this would be insane the moment it was announced, because of what we used to have with Bubble Titan. Bubble Titan was, in my opinion, a more interesting and balanced super for the sole reason that you couldn't shoot out of the bubble. So this meant that your Titan needed to place it in a smart spot so that it wasn't blocking people, and the team would need to be dipping in and out of it, getting buffed with the weapons of light, and then going out of it to be able to shoot out of it. You still had to use your brain a little bit with Bubble, because you couldn't just stand in there and be invincible. You had to be running in and out, checking buffs, and using it for cover when you're getting hit hard. All of these intricacies were lost with Well because you just stand in it the whole time, and you're buffed and basically invincible. Since Well, the only time anyone ever uses Bubble is to get slightly higher damage, because they're really trying to min-max, and the Bubble buff is slightly more than the Well Radiance buffs, so they use that as well. But even when you're using the Bubble Titan, it's still in combination with a rift right outside. So effectively, since Well has been released, Bubble is kind of a dead super. So as a Warlock player, why have I come to hate Well when it's so powerful? Well, for one, I want the game to be more challenging, and it makes it extremely difficult for Bungie to make content more difficult with Well existing. We saw this year when they supposedly had a mission to make the game more difficult, and we're tuning everything to be more difficult. It's not just almost solely because of Well. There are other reasons as well. A lot of classes are powerful, but Well is an outlier for sure. But secondly, the more important reason why for me I hate Well as a Warlock is because it will always feel like you're hurting the team anytime you aren't running it. If you want to be optimal in any difficult content, you'll always want to be running Well. And this has essentially been the case since the super was released, although it's much worse now than when it originally came out. Powerful Warlock builds have come and gone since Forsaken, but Well has always been at the top. So Well has been broken for years. Why talk about it now? Well, for one, Bungie stated this year that they wanted to make the game more difficult, and I think a huge part of why, even though they tried to do so much to shift the power level down with Lightfall, it didn't really work, is because of Well. Well just trivializes so many things, and I know they said they were going to nerf uptime, but they just didn't with Well. It's insane, and part of that is because over the past year, this neat little exotic has risen to the top of the meta called Starfire Protocol, and it's made it even more difficult to ever take off the subclass. With Starfire Protocol, you not only run Well of Radiance, the most powerful support super in the game, probably just the most powerful super in the game, hands down, but you also get to take advantage of infinite fusion grenades, which are some insane damage. And that's not even to mention the infinite uptime you get on your Rift with the exotic as well, every time you get a grenade kill, which is basically all the time. as well as the almost pre-nerf Phoenix Protocol super uptime you get with Ashes to Assets and your helmet this season. This current build for Warlock is, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, the most broken any subclass has ever been in the history of the game. It's just way too much, and to make things worse, it requires almost no brain power to use. There's almost no ability management. It's really just so consistent. And I say all this knowing Starfire will probably get nerfed, but here's the thing, that nerf won't do anything but make playing well just boring again like it was before Starfire and Solar 3.0. And don't get me wrong, it should absolutely be nerfed, but even with the nerf, well will still be way too powerful not to run, and that's a major problem because the Phoenix Protocol days were not fun, at least in my opinion. But I think as we've seen over the past few weeks, or even really the past year since Solar 3.0 came out, when well is able to also do damage, it's so insane. And the place where this really hit me was Lightfall's Legend campaign. Whatever you think about this expansion's campaign, I know people will hate the story. The story was cringe. I don't know what the Veil is either, but the gameplay was good, and it was on par from a gameplay perspective with the Witch Queen. But I found the Witch Queen's campaign much harder, but I don't think that was because the gameplay was actually more difficult. But it's because at the time, all we had was Void 3.0, and I was playing that at the time. We didn't have Solar 3.0 Well of Radiance. We did have Well, of course, but with Lightfall's campaign, it felt like a breeze because I was using Well of Radiance almost the whole time. They made it even more egregious by, not really letting us even use Strand most of the time. So I was using Well all the time, and with the Starfire build, it's too insane. It makes even this more difficult content just so easy to get through. So what do I think we should do about Well of Radiance? Well, unfortunately, I don't think the super is good for the game, and it just needs to be reworked. You can nerf it more, but it's going to hit a point where you would have to nerf it so much that it's just useless in order to not break the game, and I don't think that's a good idea either. So a stationary pool of damage and healing is just too powerful. I think it would be cooler and better for the game if they really embraced the healing identity of Solar and really leaned into that part of it rather than giving them both in a concentrated area. Some ideas of what this could be would be you send out a stream of those healing orbs that you get from Boots the Assembler, but they'll go find your teammates, and maybe even revive teammates if they're down. I think that would be really cool. Or they could kind of embrace the old Sunsinger direction where you kind of light yourself on fire, and maybe you do pulses of healing rather than constant close area. Maybe you do pulses of healing from you, so it's still good to group up on you, but it's more of a periodic thing. And maybe I love self-res. I'd be super down for self-res to come back, but maybe they could even do something if they don't want to do self-res stuff, they could make an aspect where upon taking lethal damage, it auto-activates your super and heals you to full, so it's kind of like a self-res, but not quite. At the end of the day, there's obviously some really talented people at Bungie. There are tons of things they could come up with that would be better than Well, but Well it's too much, and it's always going to be too much. And at the end of the day, I'm not the most hardcore Destiny player, but I have been playing since the beginning. And since the beginning, I've been playing Warlock almost exclusively. I don't play on all three characters every week. I just play Warlock because that's the class I love. And, I don't raid a ton, but I do every raid. I play mostly solo or with, a small group. But all that is to say, I have played the game for a long time, and I've played Warlock for a really long time. But this is the first time where I've really felt tired with the class. And I hope Bungie does something to add variety back to the Warlock class and to the game in general, because unfortunately it's starting to just feel like everything is so easy, mostly due to Well of Radiance.